Hey, this is News from Heaven. Today we're going to be talking about how angels can hear your feelings. And there's stuff, Swedenborg wrote quite a lot of material, but there are certain things that you come across only once in all of that. And this, unless I'm mistaken, this is one of those unique occurrences. And it happens to, I think, provide the answer to a really potent emotional question that you get when you're living life. Because living life can be really problematic. And to try to say, we're going to take this confusing, aggravating experience that is the day-to-day stuff we have to go through, and then try to say that there's this loving framework behind it, that things actually are okay behind the scenes. Somehow there is divine love and wisdom running it. Sure, I can get there intellectually, but there's this emotional gap, and this isn't going to solve that, but I think this is a piece of it. Because as we always talk about here, we're here being told there's this great reality. Right, that life is something that is actually okay. But we're in here in the weeds of life. And you just have, experiences piling up on you, memories flooding back at you, fears, like accidents, just things that you just can't. Does anybody understand how all this is coming together and causing me this pain here? And sometimes you feel like you're in this private little world with all these things that are attacking and bothering you, and you just don't feel like anyone hears you because you've got this anguish, whatever it is, some kind of grief or hurt or wounds of whatever kind that are being fed by all this stuff in life, and you just feel like, does anybody hear me? It's almost like you got this, like you're yelling, but there's nobody around to hear it. Well, is there? This is Spiritual Experiences, number 4821. The supplications of the good are heard in heaven as cries, and those of evil as cries in hell. The supplications of the good are heard in heaven as cries, and those of the evil as cries in hell. So right away, this is an older translation. So, do we use that word cries these days? But we get the idea of there's anguish, and it becomes audible. That what's going on in your heart here, the supplications, and we can put a few things on that. I would say that this is the asking, we get to a point where we're just, why? What is happening? And sometimes it's just the feelings themselves. That actually can be heard. There's a problematic element to this because nobody likes to stick good people in one bucket and say these people are good, and stick people in another bucket and say these are evil. And isn't that just very exclusive and judgmental? And how can you say some people are fully this and other people are out of the divine order? And isn't it like, wait a second, so when these cries are happening, when we're suffering, if this is a product of suffering, is that when the evil suffers, only hell hears it? How are they going to get aid? Hell's not going to do anything for you. So we've got things to unpack, but don't bury the headline, which is that somehow, on some level, what's going on for us down here in the physical world, whatever this event number 1, object number 2, person number 3, chance thing number 4 are all weighing in on us, and we have this just cry for help emotionally, or maybe it's through prayers, whatever it is, that you go up through the layers into the spiritual world and all the way up into heaven, that what we're going through down here, what we're feeling in our heart, actually is coming through some kind of speaker up here. Like people can audibly hear the longings, and not just people, but angels can audibly hear the longings that we have. So what is that? What's that all about? It once happened that when I spoke with a certain spirit and wanted to express it simply with love and affection, he said he heard me saying many things. Okay, so Swedenborg, just to unpack exactly what I believe this is saying. Swedenborg is here. Swedenborg has spiritual eyes open. He can interact directly with spiritual world. All of us don't have that but could. There's Swedenborg, and there's a spirit here. He obviously likes this spirit and just wants to express like feelings of just love. Like maybe wants to give the spirit a hug. I don't know what it is. But the spirit here is saying, hey man, thanks for all the nice stuff that you said. Swedenborg says, huh? I didn't say anything. But I said that I had not thought or uttered a word or any idea, that it was just a feeling, right? He said that I had said many things and that he heard them audibly expressed in words. So somehow, and this is again part of the breakdown of the validation that the inner life is tangible and real. Doesn't it sort of feel like if you're in the throes of all the little things that go on in your heart and all the little things that go on in your mind, that this stuff is just sort of vapor and it's not as concrete. You could never measure it and put a documentary into uncovering all the injustices that a person has had to go through. But they actually, that stuff is real stuff. It's spiritual material. And so you can examine it in the right context. It can be translated and expressed just as well as like a physical event. You can film it, right? And then it's displayable. But the stuff in here is displayable as well. So something that was going on in Swedenborg's heart, it was a feeling that he had, but that feeling has within it sentiments, and that those sentiments can be spontaneously expressed just because the nature of this love wants to say something. You know, wants to say compliment X or whatever it is. And you ever feel like, I can't say how I really feel? Well, the feelings, that us saying I can't say how I really feel has this sense that there is a truth in how you feel, that it could be expressed, but we just can't find the right words. And when you can find the right words, isn't that nice? And here it's saying, look, those words are the love and wisdom in the same feeling. So those things can come out. And here it almost seems like coming out involuntarily. Later, when I put so that's nice. That's a nice sentiment. I guess this show, even though we've got Swedenborg talking to spirits, this one won't get that strange. No, it's strange. If you're showing your friend this show, come and watch Swedenborg thing with me. It's not that weird. Turn it off now. Say like, oh, I ran out of batteries on my phone. Later, when I put my hand to my temples to rub them, it was said, it's too far in. It was said from heaven that this too was heard there as something spoken, expressive of every affection present in me. Do you imagine? Sure, we're talking about Swedenborg, but maybe you don't rub your temples, but the idea of the action of just, that feeling when life is overwhelming you, and when you're having to deal with this, this is just such an action of like, this is too much. Like I have nowhere to express this. Isn't that the worst? That is the worst. It was just happening to me recently, where I have these like intense feelings of just like, why is this like this? And you can't say it to anyone. You can't complain to management. Like, why is life doing this to me? And I can't complain. I can't post it because you try to say it to God or whoever is running life, but it's just nobody's hearing me. Swedenborg is saying here that even that action and all the feelings that represents was being made audible. So again, this action of just what that image is saying, picture's worth 1,000 words, where you can really get those words, that somehow, somewhere, people were understanding what he was going through. And what's implicit in that is that what we're going through here might not feel like it, but people are hearing it. You know, there is not just people, but the exact people you'd want to have hear it are hearing it. So, this was then repeated in another way and proved. So we don't know exactly how, but somehow this spirit is showing, look, your emotions, even your actions that are representative of emotions, they can get displayed in the spiritual world. I'm telling you. The reason was that in the third heaven, okay, why? And remember how I drew in this little diagram, there's all these levels, because like earth, and then you got world of spirits. Oh, I didn't draw enough lines. It doesn't matter. World of spirits, first heaven, second heaven, third heaven, up into and what makes the third heaven is It's all states of mind. I mean, it's not really places, it's states of mind. The third heaven you can get into is one where love leads and ideas follow that love, is a crude way to say it. So, why can these emotions show up audibly like that? It's because of the nature of what the third heaven is. The reason was that in the third heaven, they do not think and speak through ideas or through ideas made into words, but rather that in the third heaven they speak through affections in an inexpressible way, and that this happens audibly. So the entire mechanism of expression is different there. Here, you think about if you're learning a language other than the one you were born with, which I have tried a little bit, and it's difficult. And I know that when I'm trying to pass a test in a class for that, you really think in your native language, and then you try to think, okay, well, what word is equivalent to the one I just did below, and then how do I say that word, and then will that make the meaning? It's a pretty clunky way to try to communicate something to someone. No matter what that's happening, not no matter what, but that's happening for us, even in our native language, when we're in these sort of more closed off levels of consciousness that you would call the earthly self, the first heaven, the second heaven. These are where, sure, we've got what we want to say, but that has to go into an idea. Then when we have the idea, you may have noticed me a couple times during this little show seeming to struggle with how to put words together to express the concept that I'm thinking of. Well, there's this barrier. There's this barrier that keeps us from really being able to communicate exactly what we want to each other in the celestial state of mind, in the heavenly state of mind. It's not this artifice. It is whatever's going on in here can directly translate into sound waves-ish, the equivalent of that. So it makes sense then that feelings can come through in that heaven. Oh, no. I was told from heaven that the affections of good people are all heard in heaven. So not all. You think you slipped through the cracks here, but you don't. Your affections are heard in heaven. And if they are ardent, they are heard as cries. So that what's happening here? Why is this like this? That is this. It comes through, that it does matter what you're going through. This was also attested to earlier by the fact, which was told to me, that unspoken thought, when it arises from good and truth, is heard in heaven better than audible speech or than thought speaking out loud. Let me just process that for a second. This was also attested to earlier by the fact, which was told to me, that unspoken thought, when it arises from good and truth. So even what's going on in your mind is heard in heaven, better than audible speech or than thought speaking out loud. The message behind all of it is, you are noticed and recognized. What's going on in here is on the agenda of heaven. Okay, in the beginning, though, we were saying, what are you talking about, evil people? What do they don't get the same care? Wouldn't evil people have evil people who are caught up in evil or who are on the wrong path, whatever we want to call that? Wouldn't they have more reason to need heaven's help? So what is he talking about? Evil people's cries. Look what he says here. It is the other way around with affections of evil and falsity. So not as it seemed like in the first beginning, words, man, that you've got, here's the good people and here's the bad people, and they both can feel unhappy. The good people's unhappiness goes up to heaven. The evil people's unhappiness goes down to hell. The affections of evil and falsity. So this is when any of us are longing for something harmful or being driven mad by this impulse to be antisocial in some way. It's not that it's the anguish of somebody who has done bad things. It's the expression of the desire to do bad things. You hear that in hell. Like that's on their radio waves. And as cries too when they are ardent. I really want this love of dominion thing. And they're not heard in heaven otherwise than when they get through to the good and afflict or oppress them. just in case you're wondering, if you find yourself, maybe when we're describing this stuff here that's getting us down, and we all have these good and evil affections, but let's say when we're in our good states of mind, and you feel like some of the stuff that's harming you in your life is coming out of people who are intentionally trying to cause harm, and you think, is anyone noticing the injustice of what's happening to me? Yeah, that's written in right here. Aid is then brought to them, and thus by this the evil is suppressed. So there's a little alarm system that, even though it might seem like it's not fast enough, this is noticed, something is being done. I don't know if that's just in the spiritual world, what's going on with the spiritual, I don't know how the whole mechanism works, but good to know that that's at least on the radar. That this is the case comes from the fact that good thought and affection are received by all in heaven, and so spread themselves all around, for there is a perpetual sharing of such things in heaven. It is due to this that they are heard as cries. So something about the broader makeup of consciousness, that this system where you have these, how and why is there a pipeline from what we're doing here up into heaven? Well, this is all one great mind, the collective mind of the human race. This is how consciousness is a sea that we're all swimming in, and that if it's polluted in some way, we all suffer for that. So because heaven is naturally, the state of consciousness that allows for heaven is naturally this sharing of affection. So ideas and loves flow from one person to another. This is exchanged just like goods and services are exchanged here. So naturally, when we who are in the same ecosystem, even if we're not aware of it, our emotions just get caught up in the same distribution channels. Suffice to say, there is a systemic reason. It's not just because it would be nice. This is how the thing is structured anyway, much like in the human body, the circulatory system makes it so that everything gets equal distribution of the blood. This is the distribution of the emotion of the human race. This is it comes from the fact, for there's perpetual sharing of such in heaven. It is due to this that they are heard as cries. It's the other way around in hell. Their evil and false thoughts and affection are taken in like water into sponges and are spread around. As a consequence, there are cries there when the hells are in order and in opposition to heaven. And so from this, such evil and false thoughts are driven away there. So if you look at this system, the way it's set up is everything we think about pollution. We think about, how much trash are we putting out by the curb? How many emissions are we putting out in the vehicles that we drive and the other things that we do? Everything that we think and feel, intend to think and feel, also radiates out into the body of consciousness. So you have, or the biosphere of consciousness. So how do you deal with this stuff? Like in the body, you would have something like a kidney. How are you going to draw a kidney? I don't know. Does it look like that? No. Okay, well, we'll go with it. That takes the bloodstream and filters things out. Here, when we have affections of evil and falsity, they gravitate toward hell. And that even though hell is just a loving of that, like, yeah, burn with rage and revenge, get them, yeah. Still, by latching onto this stuff, hell does unwittingly serve this purpose of at least keeping it in hell so that it can't hurt the rest of the body. Which is all to say, the stuff that we go through that we feel like, look, we are totally alone. You have this idea of God and all this stuff, but everything we go through is disconnect. We're basically on a little consciousness island. Apparently not. We are heard. The stuff that we go through is noticed. There are systems whereby we are being cared for. And I'm not saying it feels like that, but it can at times to try to be able to notice that when we're going through it. I do find this is why I like to stick with this stuff, is that it is the thing that provides aid in those circumstances. Even if you can feel like, well, why doesn't God just, if there really is God, why doesn't God just fix this thing and that? I don't know. But these concepts, when applied in those situations, that they make it perfect all the time, but they're the things that have the most of an impact. That even if there can still be a disparity in feeling like, well, this is the protection everybody should get, but do they get enough? Still, though, this is the best medicine that I've found available. So it could well be it's the beginning of understanding the truth, and it is the truth that dispels these negative situations and can bring the aid and sort life out so it's not this complex, confusing, frustrating, painful, lonely thing. And just this little idea that what I'm feeling now, people are hearing in heaven. Just like here, you have people go out into these crisis zones and they tell and they report back to us and say, look, I went to this war zone. This is how people are actually suffering there. And that spurs us to take action. Same thing. Like we're on the radio up there. We're in their podcasts and they're working. God is working to make it so that in the end it all is okay. And that's the news from heaven. How'd you like it? Leave a comment. Let me know, what do you think about this strange occurrence in Swedenborg, and how do you feel knowing you're a podcast star in heaven, or your deepest feelings are? Either way, hey, really appreciate you hanging out. Check us out at the offTheLeftEye experience if you want to come for a weekend and immerse ourselves in these concepts and see if we can't really learn something and have it stick. We're going to be doing that. Check out those information-y links for more details. Thanks for letting us and letting me talk all the way through this, and hopefully this does something good for you as you move through your next crisis. Hopefully it's a long time from now, but we have little crises all the time, and each of them can be building up sort of the spiritual immune system. And I really think that the white blood cells there are these ideas. So hope it does you well.